Breaking tonight, hundreds of Second Amendment supporters protesting the commander-in-chief today as he threatens a new end run around Congress in an effort to change the gun laws. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Kelly File. I'm Sandra Smith, in for Megyn Kelly tonight. President Obama touching down in Roseburg, Oregon today to meet with the families of the victims of last week's mass shooting at Umpqua Community College. The White House insisting this visit purely about comforting those families, but the couple hundred protesters who greeted him in Roseburg clearly believe otherwise, considering the president was talking gun control just hours after the shooting took place. And while the president hinted at the issue during his remarks today, these folks say this is neither the time nor the place to push political agendas of any kind. Correspondent Dan Springer is live in Roseburg for us tonight. Dan.
Sandra, Roseburg residents definitely did not roll out the welcome mat for President Obama. Several hundred showed up for a protest here at the airport where Marine One landed. They carried signs like Obama go home and no Obama. Most, if not all, were gun owners. Many were carrying as they protested the president's visit. They were mainly upset about Obama's call for tougher gun laws within just a few hours of the campus tragedy, feeling he was trying to score political points.
Just looking back in the last several months and stuff, when police officers were slain and stuff like that, there's nothing come from the White House to console those families or the military when there's a disaster there. So all of a sudden he picks Roseburg just because there was a shooting here.
The White House said Mr. Obama would not talk politics today. His desire was to console the families that lost loved ones in the massacre. 9 people dead, 9 others injured. We know of at least one family that decided not to meet the president, but it was a private meeting, so we're not sure if there were more. There were 2 funerals today. That would have certainly made it impossible to attend, but afterwards, Mr. Obama spoke briefly to the media.
I've got some very strong feelings about this because when you talk to these families, you're reminded that this could be happening to your child, or your mom, or your dad, or your relative, or your friend. And so
the Washington Post reported today that Obama is considering an executive order expanding background checks, even though it would have no impact in Oregon, which is one of 6 states that has universal background checks. It's the kind of thing that fuels the protesters' distrust of the president. We spoke with a local gun shop owner who told us that gun sales are up and that they don't want more gun control.
We need strict controls. That's a bunch of baloney. We don't need strict controls. We need people that are mentally sick to have some help and to be watched accordingly.
President Obama left Oregon. He went up to Seattle for a fundraiser for Senator Patty Murray. Back to you, Sandra.
All right, Dan, thank you. Fox News contributor Charles Krauthammer today posted a column on what he called the cycle of gun talk. He argued that Democrats follow up these tragedies with remarks that are often more about politics than about real change. When they do call for new rules, he points out that they are often unrelated to anything that actually just took place. Here's a little of what we heard from the president this week and the woman who wants his job.
As I said just a few months ago, and I said a few months before that, and I said each time we see one of these mass shootings, our thoughts and prayers are not enough. It cannot be this easy for somebody who wants to inflict harm on other people to get his or her hands on a gun.
What is wrong with us that we can't stand up to the NRA and the gun lobby and the gun manufacturers they represent? This is not just tragic. We don't just need to pray for people, we need to act.
All right, well, we've got Fox News contributors Katie Pavlich and Ebony Williams here to talk about what's being proposed. Well, let's first start with Fox Digital politics editor Chris Stirewalt on the gun control politics. Because, Chris, it's a very emotional time right now. Emotions are riding high, and we are seeing that play out there in Oregon. But yet, when you look at the Democrats, you're looking at them seizing the opportunity to basically one-up each other with who can do more about gun control. Is anybody actually proposing anything that would have kept the gun out of the hands of that shooter last week?
Well, no, but it is a signal moment that you can turn public attention to it. Now, we should point out that obviously these people are sincere. The president's sincere, Hillary Clinton's sincere. They want gun control. They want to limit access to guns. They mean this, and they believe that it would be good. But also, at this political moment, they need it for another reason. Now, in the president's case, it is that there's not a lot good to talk about these days, economically, foreign policy, da-da-da-da-da. This is an issue that he likes to get on a hobby horse about, and it turns discussion away. But for Hillary Clinton, my goodness, this is a way that she can not only make up for the fact that she was to the right of much of her party on this issue in the past, but also get to the left of her closest competitor, Bernie Sanders, and try to box in the administration and Joe Biden, who looks like he's getting ready to run.
And let's be clear, with Hillary Clinton making a bold call, which puts her very much to the left of her opponent, Bernie Sanders, calling for the legalization of the right of the victim of gun violence to sue the gun manufacturer. Is this a clear strategy that we're seeing from Hillary Clinton to move far to the left of Bernie Sanders, who's got really a more libertarian approach to gun control in this country?
We see more and more Hillary Clinton as sort of the Democrats' Romney. The base does not trust her, and they don't particularly like her, so she has to make specific policy promises. She has to placate them in some way on specific policies. She flip-flops on a trade deal. She flip-flops on immigration issues. She flip-flops on this, that, and the other thing. Now she does it on guns, and she tries to one-up the president. She says, I'll do double executive orders. You'll put you on double secret super probation for gun owners, and I will force these loopholes to be closed. I will cause this to happen. So she puts the president, and by extension Joe Biden, in a box. So then you see the White House retaliate and come back and say, oh yeah, well, we're thinking about super duper duper executive action on gun control. And then you wonder why nobody trusts them on this issue.
And those people in that community, Oregon, tonight, they're just saying, just not now. It's too soon. It's too fresh. All right, Chris Starwalt, thanks for joining us tonight.
You bet.
Let's pick up the debate there now with Katie Pavlich, a Fox News contributor and townhall.com news editor, and Ebony Williams, a legal analyst and also a Fox News contributor. Ebony, I want to start with you first, because Charles Krauthammer, in this piece in the Washington Post, very eloquently points out that the president is leaving out a major point. In all of this proposed gun legislation by the Democrats, he's leaving out psychiatric intervention, which he points out these massacres are almost invariably perpetrated by severely disturbed, isolated, often delusional young men. But you don't hear that from the left.
You know, Sandra, I actually agree with Charles on this. I mean, background checks alone are not the answer. This is a comprehensive problem that's going to take a comprehensive solution. Certainly, these are identifiable groups. Oftentimes in these massive shootings, these are isolated, disturbed young men who law enforcement or even friends or surrounding them have been able to identify them. So let's get in front of this. Let's have a 48-hour psychiatric hold. That is permissible. Let's talk about the capacity of some of these large-scale magazines. We don't need 30 rounds to protect ourselves. So there are other ways to go at this.
And Katie, at this moment, Democrats are being criticized for jumping on this too quickly. The president jumping on it that day that the shootings occurred. But it's hard to blame them, considering emotions are so high, for them trying to seize the moment when it is fresh in everyone's minds.
Yeah, but they're not seizing the moment to actually solve the problem here, because they're proposing things like criminalizing private sales between family members, in which affects people in rural states. They want to have universal background checks, which of course are already there in Oregon. There is not a single mass shooting that you can point to where you can say the universal background check that the president is proposing would have prevented a mass shooting. And so it comes down to, if you're going to propose a new law rather than enforcing the laws that we have on the books, you have to be able to have results of that. And there's no evidence to prove that background checks stop these mass shootings. And it's unfortunate that the president got up last week and assumed that the Oregon community that was affected by this would immediately rally behind him in his gun control calls. I thought that was a very arrogant thing for him to do.
And Ebony, also Charles Krauthammer points out the brief mention that we heard from the president praising the gun laws in Australia. Without directly saying so, he was he was referencing Australia. What they've done there is they've mandated gun buybacks. They've taken guns out of the hands of their people. Is he by some way insinuating that we could see that happen in this country?
Well, that's certainly a way to read that. Look, I am a single woman who lives alone in New York City. I fully respect and appreciate the right to protect myself. But if there are steps we can take to make it harder for dangerous people to get guns, I do support that, and to me, that's worth it.
Katie, that sounds very scary for those who support the Second Amendment.
Well, it does, and the president's been very intellectually dishonest when he says we need modest gun proposals supported by gun owners like the ones they have in Australia and Britain, where handguns are banned. Our Second Amendment won't stand for that. The American people won't stand for that. And when it comes to giving credit where credit is due and dealing with the mental health issue, you know, Hillary Clinton sure has attacked the NRA a lot, but it's the NRA that has worked with Congress in the past and previous presidents to get mental health legislation written, passed in Congress, and signed into law to prevent these types of people from getting their hands on guns. Hillary Clinton and her gun control advocates have done nothing to help that process get better.
And Katie, I know you're always pointing out, quick to point out, that we're talking about proposing new gun legislation, and this country is having a hard time imposing the legislation that's already on the books in many states.
Absolutely.
All right, Katie, Ebony, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra.
Police in Texas are now speaking out about the teenager we've come to know as the teenager that we have come to know as the Clock Kid. See what they are now fuming, why they are now fuming mad. Plus, body cam footage clears a group of police officers involved in a fatal shooting earlier. We will show you the newly released dramatic video. And who is behind a rumor that Kevin McCarthy was having an affair? We look at that next. Plus, Howie Kurtz on McCarthy's decision not to run and how that's been portrayed in the mainstream media.
The place is impossible to run right now.
The problem is there aren't that many people who want to lead a party that's this divided.